All right, what is going on, everybody, and welcome back to Mets Weekly. We are live at this very moment on YouTube and on X for pre-game coverage of the Mets versus Brewers Game 3 of the National League Wild Card Series. This is it. Do or die. The Mets win, they move on to Philly. The Mets lose, they are going home. But before we get into all of the specifics, I want to remind everyone to subscribe to the Mets Weekly YouTube channel if you have not already for the live recordings of the Mets Weekly podcast following every Mets postseason game. For the meantime, for those of you watching live or on playback and you want to join the conversation in the future, make sure to turn on those post notifications to know when we go live. And after tonight's game, we will be going live, win or loss, whatever happens, for episode number 90 of the Mets Weekly podcast. So make sure to tune in for that later on. For those of you in the live chat as of right now, we want to let you know we love reading your comments, your questions, your concerns, everything that has to do with this team regarding all of your thoughts. If you feel like you're being ignored, you're not being ignored. You're just being starred throughout the show so we can pull up as many as we can to keep the flow of the conversation going. Also, make sure to follow Mets Weekly on X and on TikTok for other content throughout the offseason coming up, or maybe throughout the postseason. We still haven't really decided what we're going to do in the offseason yet over there, but we did just wrap up Frank's post-game thoughts after every single Mets regular season game titled the Mets Frankly Post Game. So make sure to go follow us over there. For our audio listeners, make sure that you're following us on any of your favorite listening platforms to not miss the audio version of new episodes, which will be our post games that go up at 9 a.m. the following day that they are recorded. So let's get into our pre-game show. And we are coming off of, let's just say, a brutal loss in Milwaukee last night, and we were pretty much all over the place, basically dissecting everything that went on in that game. The Mets had it. They had it. They were up 3-1. It was a close-knit game. Not every single game was going to be a blowout with a healthy lead. They had opportunities to have a more of a healthy lead. They did not take them. Tons of takeaways from that game. But now that we got a chance to sleep on it, now that we have been able to accept it, the 5 stages of grief, of course, before we go into the hellhole that most likely will be the do or die in Game 3 against the Brewers, I'd say let's just unpack like the more reasonable takeaways here. Frank, I know you got pretty heated last time that we were on here, and rightfully so, absolutely. But coming into today, just reflecting on Game 2, what are you looking at right now as the full-on thoughts? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely still frustrated. I'm still not happy about what happened. The one thing, like I said, that really bothered me the most was that whole pinch hitting with a Winker late in the ninth inning. And as I thought about it, I thought of a way that they could do it that actually made sense. So the way you would have to do it is you would have to have Bader as the one who replaces Vientos as far as his spot in the order. And then you would have to defensively switch Bader and Acuna. So Acuna's batting the bottom of the order, Bader's third, and then you still could do it where if Winker pinch hits for Bader's spot, he could go to the outfield and Taylor can move to center. So there still is a way to do that substitution. Because they said that Acuna was batting third, but I didn't actually see him with the bat. So maybe they had it wrong on the broadcast, perhaps, I hope. But I was just thinking there is a way to do those substitutions without it actually putting you in that spot I talked about. You had no infielders. So at least I feel a little bit about that, just hoping that that's what they were doing. But overall, I mean, there still is just like, I understood the game plan as far as the bullpen, like as good as Maton's been all year, especially with limiting the home run ball, going to Stanek, going to Garrett, 1-1, Maton 1, and then Diaz 1. Like, I understand what the game plan was. It obviously just didn't work. I still felt like there were those opportunities to score earlier, be more aggressive. And, we're just got to hope that we get the good version of Quintana. I mean, that's kind of the tricky thing about him is that he had this, 23, 24 inning scoreless streak. So there are times where, Quintana can give you a good start, but then there are other times when he doesn't. And you know what? We talked yesterday in the pregame show about how this was Friday's matchup. So now today we're getting a rematch of Saturday's matchup. And for Quintana, things got off to a decent start for him, but then all of a sudden in that fourth inning, fifth inning, things did get tricky, and he gave up a couple of walks. And for Quintana, he's a tough matchup for this Brewers team, in my opinion, because he is someone that does like to try to draw the chase. We call it the nibbling and things like that. And with how Brewers are not a chasing team, I feel like it's going to be tough for him to do that.
Yeah.
So I do wonder how that whole dynamic is going to go. But now looking at these lineups, the one thing that I'm very interested by is the fact that Gary Sanchez is catching tonight instead of William Contreras. So I've talked about I want to see the Mets be more aggressive, but I feel like today is the day. Lindor, send him. If you want to send Iglesias, go for it. Send Nimmo, send Marte, send Taylor. I mean, let's put some pressure on, because you know what? When the Mets faced Myers last time, they only had one hit in 4 innings. So if the hits are going to be few and far between, you got to find other ways to score runs. If you got to play small ball, do it. I mean, it's an elimination game. You have to try some new things. You have to be aggressive. So I do want to see that different approach, but kind of like I also talked about yesterday, the Mets did have a bit of a different personnel group when they faced Myers. So number one, Francisco Alvarez did not play because he had that back cramp, back spasm that happened the night before on Friday. So you had Torrens out there. The other thing, Bader made the start, and we know he's been awful offensively, so you didn't have Taylor, so that's another change. You also had Acuna in there over Winker, and we obviously saw Winker get the big hit the other day. So you do have at least 3 different hitters, and by all accounts, better hitters than you did on Saturday. You know, as far as the lineup, last time they had Iglesias bat second, they moved Iglesias to fifth today, and I found that very interesting because also remember last night I was saying, oh, I find it weird that, you know, your best hitter is supposed to bat 2 and you have your second baseman doing it. But now, like we said, Vientos is one of your best hitters. You put him 2. I like that. Give him more ABs. But what I also found interesting is the Iglesias behind Alonso part. Now, I think the thinking, at least if it was me, if I was to make that decision, is that you know that Alonso is a very heavy strikeout guy. So if you have men on base, like you got Lindor on, you got Nimmo on, and you're trying to get these guys over, you're worried about how Alonso strikes out, and then a lot of times, like if Marte's after him or Martinez, those guys are also strikeout or ground ball candidates, double play candidate. So I feel like with Iglesias, with how good he's been with runners in scoring position, men on, how good he's put bat to ball, that you hope that he's the guy that could get that sac fly or move these runners over or something. Yeah. You just don't want to find yourself in a situation where you have guys on and you get back-to-back strikeouts. So I'm wondering if maybe that's why they put Iglesias there as far as the way they broke it up. So I did find that interesting that they went with that after it looked like Iglesias batting 2 was happening pretty consistently. So I'm glad that they're trying new things to try to generate some offense, and we'll see if it works out. But the fact that Winker is starting today, that means that I don't have to say, oh, when are you going to pitch hit Winker? When are you going to pitch hit Winker? So if we see Ashby or we see Hall or if we see another left-hander comes into face Winker, then that's when you go JD Martinez. But if not, if they're going to be going with righties, then you know it's definitely a good opportunity for Winker to do his thing. And you also have to keep in mind, just the last thing with Ashby, he really struggled first game when he came in. The Mets really got to him, Nimmo, obviously. Yeah. So I wonder if maybe Pat Murphy's a little reluctant to go to Ashby. And if that means less chance at left-hander, better opportunity to start Winker because he'll get more ABs against the righties.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the best way to kind of map this thing out is, yes, you do have the situation at hand with the situational hitting. Personally, I don't know how that's going to bode well because it seems like this Tobias Myers guy does better with runners on from the stretch. He does struggle a little bit from the windup. But I think that, you know, at some point they're going to have to come through, and hopefully it does come through from somebody who maybe be playing for a contract. I don't know. Maybe it will finally be that time to do so. I haven't really been confident with him up in runners in scoring position at all, but I mean, I don't even know what to even say anymore in terms of what we can actually get from him now. I mean, last night, it definitely wasn't the best managed game, but there was, you know, there were some thought processes that where I just felt like still, and I still feel from last night, where I feel like they should have extended somebody. It should have been either Minaya got another inning, Garrett got another inning, Stanek got another inning, or they just go full balls to the wall and say, Diaz, you get the 8th, and then we'll go to somebody else in the 9th. Or, I mean, because like I'm fine with using the closer in the 8th if he's facing the top of the order. And I feel like when they're facing the top of the order, you cannot have a soft tosser like Phil Maton out there. As great as he has been, it's too close of a game to where a soft tosser misses something down the middle like he did. One home run ties the game, puts you in a shitty position. They should have took him out after he faced 3 batters, in my opinion, and then should have went to somebody else. They should have went to Diaz, in my opinion, in that, but apparently he just wasn't available for that. I know he's worked a lot, but when it comes to the postseason, they just kind of went a little bit conservative in the game too, because they knew that, well, they have another chance to win this game, but also the Brewers have another chance to win a game as well and win the series. So I feel like it was just played a little bit too conservative. The main thoughts that I really had was just basically just thinking about how Pete Alonso tripped over his own bat. Like, really, I'm not even like that. That really stuck with me for a while. I'm not going to lie. Like, I really just have this thought of like how it just, that has seemed to be the season that we have gotten from Pete Alonso, where he literally, figuratively, with runners in scoring position and overall just production, not even saying if he's regressed as a player or not, but saying that like it basically has just been Pete Alonso tripping over his own bat, getting in his own way. Like, literally, that's how I have defined this season for Pete Alonso as the main run producer that he's supposed to be in this lineup. And that is kind of how I have thought about it for a while. I mean, it really is just poetic in that way, that he just basically just tripped over his own bat in such a huge opportunity to break the game open. And I mean, it just, I really, I don't even know what to say anymore. I'm sure we'll get into it, but I do want to talk about the bullpen scenario, of course, because of how it kind of boded last night. Of course, you had Garrett and Stanek. Most likely they both will be available. I don't know if Maton is going to be available because he's worked 4 out of 5 days, and it did not bode well last night. So you're definitely going to have Kranick available because he has yet to make his debut. I hope he doesn't, because that most likely will just be a blowout. But with Danny Young, Reed Garrett will probably be available, only throwing like 11 pitches yesterday. Ryan Stanek, I'm sure, would be willing to pitch like pretty much any game. Like if we were in a 7-game series, I'm pretty sure he would be ready to pitch all 7 games. Because that's just Ryan Stanek, a man off adrenaline. Edwin Diaz is going to be available, which we will get into in a second. Brazaban has not pitched in this series yet, I don't think. And neither has Ottavino. Budo will definitely be available. And then they also said Peterson could be a long relief option.
And they haven't used Danny Young either.
They haven't used Danny Young either. So,
or Kranick.
In regards to Diaz, Mendoza, he did let us know today that he is available for more than 4 outs. It looked like he was only available for 4 outs last night, which, again, it's just like the top of the order. They should have just put him. I just think that they should have just put him in the 8th and just see how it went. Because, again, like if they were to close it down, the best case scenario is Edwin Diaz closing it down with the most dominant stuff out of the bullpen, and then you get 2 days of rest. Now you've kind of put yourself in this situation where you didn't use Diaz. He's been rested for another day, but I mean, I don't even know how they kind of want to fix things in with Diaz, but I feel like the way that they need to look at it is they need to adjust very quick in terms of the pitching. And I will get into that, of course, with Jose Quintana. But, you know, the 3-batter minimum rule needs to be their best friend today. If something's not working, they got to make the move. I don't know if that's how you feel with this going into the bullpen, because I feel like managing this is just the best way to do it is just kind of just feeling the way it is and just using that 3-batter minimum rule and seeing what you can squeeze out with Quintana. If he gets past the 5th inning, I personally think that would be a win for us personally.
Yeah, I mean, like we said, there has to be that sense of urgency. There's no, oh well, let's see if this guy could figure out. I mean, and like you said, by those three batters, you have to get a good feel on if the pitcher has it or not. So if they don't, you got to just try and hope that someone else does. I mean, you really can't be messing around with that.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to see Diaz get, you know, a multi-inning outing, of course, because I do trust him to do so. I know everybody sees him blow a game and then they just, you know, go after him and never trust him ever again, and then they start trusting him when he starts to dominate again. But I mean, I feel like at one point you got to use your top guns here. You don't have a choice. I mean, there is no tomorrow right now. You have to use that as there's no tomorrow. You put all of your chips in. You have most of them available, and that's how they're going to have to do it. They're going to have to use their bullpen most likely a lot in this game. And hopefully they can piece these things together because Jose Quintana, he's most likely good for 5. Maybe he's only good for 4 in this outing. Who knows? I mean, really, who knows? Because it's really just been a crapshoot with Jose Quintana. It's either he's had, you know, it's either he has had the best outing, he has had like 8 scoreless innings this year, or he can't get the freaking ball over the plate and he goes like, you know, 3 2/3 or 4 1/3. Like, we have definitely had a wide range of Quintana outings. And that is the main reason as to what, with his consistency and with his inability to go deep into games, as to why, no matter what happens in the postseason, I'm not pushing to bring him back whatsoever next year. I just don't think that there is any stability for somebody who's 35 years old, and a soft tossing lefty who, you know, doesn't seem to fit into that meta of, like, I don't know, attacking the strike zone and getting these swings and misses. And it just feels like he's a pace guy. And for some reason, you know, pitching around the strike zone, I just don't see that lasting that long. We have seen struggles. We have seen the best of him. But the contact managing lefties, I mean, it really is just enough to just be throwing them out there every single time. But as for the other opposition that I do want to go to, the opposition that I want to go to, if I could speak proper English, that would be a lot better for our viewers listening to us. But I do want to go into Tobias Myers, who the Mets will be facing, like you said, for the second time in a week, I believe. But I think that when he did face us, he gave up like 1 hit in 5 innings to us. Like, we didn't do anything about him. 4 innings. We didn't do anything to him. It could be a tough matchup, but he's had some times where he hasn't had it. He is a rookie, so I don't know if there's any like kind of pressure coming down here. But if you want to give like the full rundown of Tobias Myers, here it is. He is a kind of a 6-pitch righty, but he also has 5 pitches that he's mainly used. He's kind of ditched a sinker. He's 40% fastball, 23% cutter, 21% slider, 11% changeup, and 4% curveball. His best graded pitch is most likely his changeup, which sits in the low 80s and tops about 85. He has massive glove side life with over 13 inches of induced vertical break and 12 inches of ride, which is basically it floats a lot around the strike zone and then lands and paints towards the edge of the plate. And the grades for you to look at, it's more of just pitch characteristics that make it more flashy, even though he uses it 11% of the time. 117 stuff plus, an 86 command plus, and an 81 pitching plus. Now, command is going to be something that we do focus on regarding somebody like Tobias Myers, who has actually had some struggles with it, mostly with his arm side action cutter, which is going to be the main thing to watch, that hitters have absolutely destroyed, especially being left-handed hitters. He also has a rising fastball that sits 92 to 93, tops 96, but he also has over 19 inches of induced vertical break, so he can get a lot of upstairs chases, especially to right-handed hitters. But as for hard cutting slider as well, which is a little bit more of a hybrid to his cutter, but doesn't really land in the strike zone as much as it does against left-handed hitters with his slider. He also has the hybrid breaking curveball, or you can call it a slurve if you want to call it as well. Other notes, he does have a very high throwing angle, which is allowed to produce some of the whiffs that kind of tumble off the plate with his secondary pitches. He does have plus control, doesn't walk many, but he does have some streaky command, and that's just one thing that I will say. Him being a predominant fly ball pitcher, but with some solid contact management ability, basically suppressing barrels fairly enough to give him volume to go throughout starts. Left-handed hitters are the main key here, and the Mets, even though they have a righty-dominant lineup, left-handed hitters versus Myers' fastball have a 366 xWOBA, quality of contact, and then left-handed hitters against his cutter have a 354 xWOBA, and hitters. And even though he has run into some hard contact, and even though he can fill the zone a little bit and challenge hitters and miss some spots, he still has been really good situationally. Hitters only have a 435 OPS this season against Myers with runners in scoring position. And even though he can be good situationally, you're going to have to make him work. That usually is the best way to do it, of course. For him to kind of throw a give-up pitch or throw a bad pitch, you're going to have to bring it up, because he does have the sixth most pitches per inning at 16, which is among starting pitchers. So they're going to have to make him work. If they let him get into a groove as to where they're swinging first pitch and just producing a bunch of outs, that's going to put them in a really tough scenario, especially dreading the upcoming bullpen of the Brewers, which is very, very dominant. Now, as for Myers, what do you see, Frank? Anything you want to add to kind of put in a key matchup for the Mets to succeed against Tobias Myers, who they did not last time they faced him?
Yeah, like you said, he is tough on right-handers with his arsenal, especially these Met right-handed hitters. So you have, of course, like all righties, that slider breaking away towards the right-handers. The curveball is used very rarely, only 4%, but that also breaks towards the outside. Then you have that changeup that really rides in on the right-hander's hands. You have that cutter that's up, and then that, like you said, that fastball, though that vertical rise is really up. So this is a team in the Mets that we know sometimes chases up. They chase away, they chase inside, so it is a tough matchup on a lot of these right-handed hitters. Guys like we saw Iglesias really struggle on the inside yesterday. We've seen Alvarez have trouble on the inside before. Obviously, Alonso's trouble on the outside. So, like, a lot of these guys have issues. So, like you said, it's up to these left-handers to stand up, and you're really hoping that Brandon Nimmo could be the beneficiary of a mistake pitch, hopefully. Maybe a slider or something, a cutter that kind of hangs over the middle of the plate. He's able to drive one with him being a fly ball pitcher. They need that big fly ball. I mean, we are in game 3 now and still yet to see a home run from this Mets offense. So, I mean, they could really use one from Nimmo. I mean, obviously, if they got one from Winker, that'd be great. That's what you brought him in for. But, I mean, overall, you're really hoping that the left-handers are the ones that can kind of take advantage. Obviously, Lindor, I mean, he's another huge one as the switch hitter, yet to get a hit in this series, and he's had so many big home runs for the Mets. Obviously, Atlanta, the most recent one, so it would be a great time for him to get his home run. So that's kind of what I'm looking at. I'm looking at these left-handed bats that have come through big in the past to really be able to do that again, and just, like you said, hope they can keep battling to get that mistake pitch to get him to finally mess up and then capitalize in a big way.
He doesn't throw many. He doesn't throw many pitches outside of the zone. So even though he does use a lot of that kind of, towards the other batter's box, of course, as a right-handed hitter to a right-handed pitcher, he does tend to leave a lot of things over the plate and get a little too much plate. So you're going to have chances to make contact. And I'm really hoping that those chances kind of leads to a little bit more power, because they have not really hit for much power in this series. And even though we know that Milwaukee has a really good pitching staff and they know how to suppress contact with the great defense that they do have behind them, I mean, it would be nice to see a little bit more extra base hits in this game. And we really do want to see a little bit more of a susceptible to hard contact pitcher such as Tobias Myers. Hopefully they can figure it out to as to where they can get some of these extra base hits, and I don't know if they're going to be able to knock him out of the game or not. But we'll see what they're going to be able to do. Now, as for some of the key matchups that I want to put in here, some of the players to watch, we already hinted towards it a little bit. Brandon Nimmo is the guy that I'm pointing to on this one, because as for Tobias Myers, he has really, really struggled to get actual results at all with his cutter. His cutter, he has definitely put it basically in the wheelhouse of left-handed hitters. Pull hitters have just absolutely destroyed it this year. And Brandon Nimmo versus cutters this year, slashing 302, 375, 581, and he has a 62.9% hard hit rate. He has faced about over 400 cutters this year, so it's a really good sample size. So if something gets into his wheelhouse, I'm expecting Brandon Nimmo to be one of the main catalysts for tonight. Jesse Winker, not the best against cutters that left-handed hitters should be, but he has, of course, the good numbers against secondary stuff, which is what Tobias Myers definitely goes to. I'm really expecting him to really go secondary, of course, because I feel like with that over-the-top movement, the Mets have been actually pretty good with the high ball, especially from that arm angle that he has. But from the other side, Jose Quintana, Willy Adames, 5 for 14 against him with a home run, 2 doubles. And then Jackson Chourio, who has not been in the league for a while, but he has faced him in 2 separate games already, 3 for 5 with a double. So there's definitely some concerns here. Obviously, the lefty to the righty. One of the main things that definitely faults Quintana sometimes, where he starts to give up the long ball this year. I believe Quintana has given up 22 home runs this year, and I believe that I believe that a majority of them are to right-handed hitters. I know he struggled against lefties to start off the season. Pretty sure the first one that he gave up was to Christian Yelich at the beginning of the season. Yeah, I'm just trying to, let me just see. 16 of the 22 home runs he's given up have been to right-handed hitters. So definitely if it comes into the wheelhouse, again, it all really has to do with command regarding somebody like Jose Quintana, who we know could contact manage, but sometimes that contact can be tough. It can be a lot of hard contact, and it can get you into a problem that you're looking at. So as for, Brandon Nimmo, as for the lineup, of course, how this kind of things match up, Frank, I'll go to you on how this lineup is also kind of constructed. Again, we've talked about some of the situational hitting, but we'll see what happens. But I don't know what your thoughts are. Let me know.
Yeah, so what's kind of scaring me looking at it is the Chourio and Terang batting 1-2. I mean, those guys have been the 2 really big pests this series so far for the Brewers, and I feel like we were kind of talking about with utilizing Edwin Diaz. I feel like if it's 1 through 4 in the 8th inning, you got to go to him there. I feel like that's really the opportunity. You can't face Chourio and Terang and Contreras and Adames, these guys, with anyone less than Edwin Diaz. And you'll just take your chances with the Sanchez, Hoskins, Perkins, or Mitchell probably pinch hits there, and then Frelick, Ortiz. So I really want to see the Mets kind of utilize their best pitchers against the Brewers' best hitters, because that's really going to be a big key here. But, like you mentioned, they're going with a right-handed heavy lineup with the lefty starter for the Mets. And if things don't go well for Quintana, next man up is David Peterson, who also is left-handed. So no matter which option the Mets went, it's not a situation that really favors either one of the pitchers that they have. So that definitely is something that is not ideal when like their other option is also left-handed. So I do find that to be a bit of a challenge. But overall, the things to consider is that once you do get to the right-handers in the bullpens, like let's say Budo, for example, or if they go Stanek a third day in a row, or they go to Reed Garrett, when you look at this Brewers lineup, there are 3 guys that finished with OPS plus that's above league average. It was Chourio, Contreras, and Adames. I bet Met fans find it hard to believe that Bryce Harang had an 85 OPS plus this year and he batted 254. Based off the way he hits against the Mets, you wouldn't think that, but that's what the numbers were this year. I mean, you want to count Jory Ortiz at 101, you can, but overall, a lot of these guys are hovering in the mid 80s, in the low 80s.
Yeah.
Like, they're just not these amazing offensive players. And a lot of these right-handers are obviously better against the lefties. So against Quintana, those numbers are better. But once you go to your bullpen and you have your right-handed pitchers out there, it shouldn't be as much of a challenge as it has been. And on the flip side for the Mets, everybody in this lineup is pretty much at OPS plus at 100 or higher, and most of these guys well above it. Lindor 130, Vientos 130, Nemo well above, Alonso, Iglesias way above, Winker between Nationals and Mets he's above, Marte above, Taylor's at 99, Alvarez 101. So that's just like the disparity like in the lineups is that like on paper statistic wise the Mets look like the better hitters, but like I've said before, when you factor in how many bases the Brewers steal, then they're able to kind of have a lot of offensive production. And so far, the Mets have done a good job controlling the running game. Now, with Quintana, it might be a little tougher, but overall, that has something that I thought was going to be a big problem. It hasn't yet. So we'll see if they're able to keep that going. But that's where it comes down to Quintana of being aggressive and not walking batters because, like we say, those walks are equivalent to doubles, to triples, and overall become very easy runs with how this Brewers team plays.
Molin Labe, I don't know if I said that correctly, saying I have no faith Quintana is pitching tonight, and then he said, "Oh, and Pete Alonso is starting too." I mean that's kind of how we have felt with Pete Alonso at the plate recently. Just really not really much confidence. I mean, it really has just not been a fun time to watch Pete Alonso this year, especially in a walk year where we expected a lot of things from him. And right now, he is fighting for his Mets tenure right now tonight. This could be the last time that we see Pete Alonso in a Mets uniform, and, maybe he'll have something to do about that. I don't know. It would be nice for him to step up in a game that his team needs him, but as of right now, I'm not really counting on it. I'm just really looking at everybody around him who have actually come through. It seems like everybody has had their moment this year, besides Pete Alonso in this lineup. I mean, if you're talking about, Lindor, he's come through so many times. Mark Vientos has come through many times. Brandon Nimmo, I mean, even though he had a tough year, he's come through. Iglesias, of course, has worked his magic. Winker has even had a few moments, and he hasn't even really played that much as a Met. Starling Marte is probably still one of our best high leverage hitters, believe it or not. When he decides to actually play, Tyrone Taylor's had a few good moments, and then of course Francisco Alvarez, who has really dialed in for the moment, especially recently in September, where he's actually played very well in crunch time. And then there's Pete Alonso, who, I mean, it's really just been pretty much a forgettable year when you talk about it from situational hitting. But as for, talking about this entire season, it is not done yet. The Mets, of course, they have one more chance. This could be the final time. But if they win this game, they move on. Bryce Kazda, he's coming into the chat. I guess he's a Brewers fan. I'm just going to say that. He's saying, let's go Brewers. Listen, I don't have really much against Brewers fans. Right now I do. I want to beat them. But listen, let the best team win. I'm sure we'll have tons of Brewers fans in the chat for our post game when that comes up. If we win, or maybe if we
lose, they'll be there.
If we lose, they'll be in here probably.
Yeah.
If we win or lose, I mean, it's whatever. I think that everybody can take their victory lap, and may the best team win. Whoever scores more wins games. Again, like I said, the great Josh McDaniels will always say that. We'll see. I personally want to talk about the confidence level right now from 1 to 10. We did talk about that. I am just going to tell you right now, with the uncertainty of Quintana, I'm at like a 3 right now. I'm not even joking. Like, I'm not trying to be negative. I'm not trying to say that, oh, well, I don't believe in this team. I just don't have a good feeling about this tonight. I just don't. And that's kind of just how I feel every single time that Quintana takes the mound. So it's pretty much that whole thing. But there's something about this that just can go wrong instantly. And that's the main reason as to why my confidence level is very low. I don't know about you, Frank, but I'm at a 3 at this current moment.
Yeah, I'm at a 4, so I'm right there
Yeah.
with you. Like you said, just with Quintana, I just don't feel good. And listen, there's a lot of pressure on both teams today. The elimination game for both sides, whoever wins advances, whoever loses goes home. So, just how are these guys going to react to it? I think especially like on this Mets side, obviously Alonso. I mean, this is pressure. I mean, this is literally it. It could be his last chance to really show that he's worth something, to actually show he's worth a big money contract, even if it's not from the Mets, if it's from another organization like Chicago, like Houston, like Seattle. He has to show something on the big stage. So this is a huge opportunity for him. But like we've talked about, it feels like the bigger the spot, the more he presses and kind of gets out of his game. So I just want to see kind of who steps up when like it really matters most, like who's got like what it takes, like who's really made of something. I feel like is really what we're going to find out today, and just see who's got the clutch gene, so to speak, because there just is that big maximum pressure, and we'll just see who's up to the task. And you get to learn a lot about your players, about your team in these kind of scenarios. You really, when it comes to like team building, off season stuff, it really kind of makes things a lot easier for you when you're like, okay, well, when things were as hard as it possibly could be, who are the guys that could still be productive for me? I feel like that really is what you're going to find out here. So that's what I'm looking at. I mean, that's kind of how I view it, is that obviously we want to get as far as we can, but it's also important to note, like, okay, well, how did we get this far? Why didn't we go further? And who are we going to keep or change to make sure it's a different result next time? So, I mean, that's just kind of the way I feel about it, is that you really just kind of get to see what your guys are made of.
Yeah, of course. I mean, when it comes down to it, we did talk about a defining moment in 2022 with this team. This team got one hit in this elimination game, this same elimination game 2 years ago, and we talked about it. We're like, okay, there's some guys on this team we're not bringing
Yeah, well,
back.
listen, we got to watch
You
Myers'
know?
ears very closely tonight. We got to watch his
Yep.
spin rates. I mean, we really got to keep an eye on
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. We also have to, get more than one hit too. That
Yep.
would be really nice. Malcolm Stevenson coming in and saying, like, do you think that the Mets can beat the Phillies regardless? I personally think that the Mets match up better with the Phillies than the Brewers,
I do too.
because the Phillies are a little bit more of a
Swing and miss.
the Phillies are a little bit more of a boom or bust lineup, and that's basically
Hmm.
been the best way that the Mets can do this stuff, with swings and misses and not really relying on contact. And that's kind of how I would, line it up a little bit. Even though the Mets don't have very high strikeout pitchers, you also have a lot of guys swinging for the fences. So,
Hmm.
the ground balls and things like that. With the Brewers, you get somebody on base, automatically it tenses up. Like, that's this type of team, like how they do it. They play small ball, that's their identity. And they even were able to win with the home run ball yesterday. So that kind of brings into another factor as to also with the top two guys in the lineup for the Brewers who have absolutely destroyed us. Frank, anything you want to add?
Yeah, I mean, definitely, like you said, with the ground balls, the way this Mets infield defense is assembled, the Brewers are just a tough matchup for us. Probably tougher for us than just about anybody. So I do think that even though Philly has the great starting rotation and the great bullpen, we faced Philly twice this past couple of weekends, and we saw that there are times where our starters could hang with them. There's times we could beat them. So it's like we said, if your starters hang with their starters, you get big hits from your big guys, whether that be Nimmo, Lindor, Vientos, somebody, you can win a game, and that's just kind of the way, and that's how you do it when it gets to the big stage, because it's good pitching versus good pitching. Who's going to get the big hits to kind of set you apart? That's really what happens against the best pitchers.
We'll see what happens. Again, I think that, the Mets have played well in the margins against the Phillies, but the Phillies have also bested them as well. But the Mets have hung around with them, so anything could happen. But of
Okay.
course, we've got to get
So
through the Brewers first.
it says why William Contreras is not catching. He has a scratchy knee, according to Pat Murphy phrase earlier this season. He was running early. He's DHing. Gary Sanchez is catching, so that's why. It's because of Contreras' health.
All right. Interesting. Okay, so a scratchy knee. I've never seen that type of diagnosis, but you know what? We're just gonna go with it. Now, Milo, speaking of Sanchez, saying that you realize that Sanchez is
Yeah.
catching,
Hmm.
opportunity to steal some bases early on. Absolutely agree with you on that one.
I mean, could we get like a wild pitch? I mean, have we gotten like one wild pitch from Milwaukee yet? I mean, that would help too. Just to have, because listen, we're not gonna move the base runners up with our bats. So if they could give us a hand, that'd be great.
I mean, hopefully. I mean, we've seen Gary Sanchez catch before. It's not great. He used to be a lot better at it. Now he's getting older. Now he just ain't good at it.
He's catching
anymore.
less.
Unconsensus zone. I don't know what he's saying. He's saying this is good. Your generation needs to learn the best version of the Mets is the underdog version of the Mets, which is great. But the only thing I take offense to is our generation. Again, these are way too many different generations you're talking about. You got me, who is right now like in this generation. Then you have Frank, who's like 1800s, 1920s. Like that's where he kind of places it out. So he's seen it all. But of course, this is true. Listen, it's I guess fake pessimism. I guess we can put out here. You know, expect the worst, and then the best will come out. Who knows? Reverse psychology, however you want to put it out there. You know, saying the fan expectation is 0. That's when the Mets magic happens. You know what? By all means, go ahead. I hope that they do succeed here. But in the realistic term, history's definitely not on our side when we talk about these elimination games, because of what happened last time, but not only with how some of these guys have matched up, and also how we've matched up with the Brewers this year. I mean, they've had our number fairly. I think it's 5-2, combining the season and the postseason.
Yeah.
We'll see.
No,
see if they can close it out one more time. What happened now?
It would be 6-2.
6-2.
Because they won yesterday.
Yes.
Yeah. Opening day sweep, 2 last weekend, 1 tonight, 6. I mean, 1 last night. Sorry, 1 last night.
Okay.
1 last night.
But,
and I think
we'll see what happens.
Another thing too is that like we talk about the Mets facing a rookie, meanwhile Quintana's a veteran. So I mean, he's pitched in the postseason before. The one really bad start he had was 2017 against the Dodgers, where he gave up 6 runs. But last time he was in playoffs was 2022 when he was with the Cardinals, and 5 in third inning, scoreless ball. This last time he was in the postseason was 2 years ago, and we know that fortunately the Quintana now is not the same Quintana it was 2 years ago. But overall, at least he's been on a big stage before, so it won't be totally new to him compared to somebody like Myers. So maybe that helps, but I'm not sure.
The thing is that postseason history is just really so hard for me when it comes to the New York Mets. And it really just showed example last night. I mean, Phil Maton, untouchable in the postseason in his career. And it's like, he just didn't have it. And that kind of took out the game for us. We'll see what happens. I don't know if, my confidence is kind of low now, after last night. Hopefully they don't come out flat, because if they come out flat, it's going to be really tough against this Brewers bullpen. And speaking of winning this game and getting this game, let's get to my keys to the game, as I usually have 3. And we'll go in through one by one, of course. First one, minding the plug. Minding a non-favorable matchup such as Jose Quintana versus the Brewers, it might be something that could go south quick, obviously, with how Quintana has been up and down this season. And as the 3rd lowest chase rate team in the majors, Quintana has the lowest rate of pitches out of the strike zone this season among any starting pitcher. So if Quintana can't paint his spots, base runners will start to add up against a really base-stealing, prominent Brewers team. If Quintana has failed to get out of the 5th inning twice this season versus Milwaukee already, with a fully rested bullpen, I would say that a maximum 3 earned runs in 5 innings pitched, no matter what the pitch count is, pull the plug. I don't care if he is completely rolling, but if he's rolling, it's whatever. If he's gone 5 scoreless, that's fine. But if it's 3 earned runs or 2 earned runs with 5 innings pitched, pull the plug. Move on. Take it as you be it. just let him go the 5 and fly that he's comfortable with, and that's how I would approach that. I don't know if that's any different that you would do, Frank. What do you think?
No, I mean Pat Murphy. He's had that same approach with his guys. So like Peralta didn't want to go a third time. Frankie Montas didn't want to go that third time. So for Severino, I mean not Severino, for Quintana, I'd say the same thing. Where that top of the order, the way the Brewers stacked is really dangerous tonight. That Churiel, Terang, Contreras, Adames combination. You don't want them to get any more comfortable and feel even better about their swings because outside Terang, those other guys could make it a totally different game in one swing of the bat very quickly.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens again. Like, I think that this is kind of a rough matchup for somebody like Jose Quintana, who kind of just goes off of like the pace or whatever. I know he does. Does he have a good pickoff move? I know Peterson has a good pickoff move.
Great. I mean,
right. I don't know who has the best pickoff move. It's probably Peterson on the
I would say Peterson's
staff, but,
better control the running game than him.
I know that Severino doesn't have a pickoff move. Just trying to see any of the numbers here that I could try and add up here, but I mean, let's see. I'm not sure. Yeah, I don't see any of this. I don't know. Maybe I think I've seen him pick off a few runners, but nothing really, really crazy. But again, they can wreak havoc on the base pass. We already know this by now. So he's got to hit his spots, and that's the key to this one. Regarding somebody like Jose Quintana. Now, the next key that I want to put out here is something that we learned from last night, and that being stay on the gas. Last night, the Mets began the night 2 for 2 with runners in scoring position, and the end of the night 0 for 9. The entire Brewers bullpen is 100% going to be available for Game 3, so the best chances are to score early and attack early. Frank, I'm pretty sure you can agree with that key. I mean, they just stalled out last night, and they can't do that again.
Yeah, like I said, the personnel is a little different this time. Now that Winker is starting, there's not really. I mean, if you want to pinch hit, that's the thing that with how Martinez that's the thing that makes things tough is that with how Martinez has performed lately, I'm not in that much of a rush to bring him into the game. So once again, the only person I consider pitch hitting for is Taylor. So it's like, would you go to Martinez early if there's runners on? With his double play threat, I just don't know if it's worth it, to be honest. I mean, that's kind of where things get really dicey is that this time around, I just like where they have it, so you could just kind of leave it as it is. But I do want, like I said, that you weren't. So Contreras was supposed to start, and now Gary Sanchez is in because of a slight injury. So this was not supposed to happen. So use that to your advantage. That like the Brewers are technically doing something they didn't want to do. So try to make them pay by being more aggressive on the bases.
Yeah, obviously going and taking the double play away, of course, is something that is going to be key. Again, this is a really good defensive team in the Milwaukee Brewers, so taking the double play away, especially against somebody like Gary Sanchez, who is pretty much slow as all dirt at this point in his career, that's definitely key. They gotta also bring in there too. I wrote these before Gary Sanchez was even announced as the catcher, but that's another thing. Just stay on the gas. Keep it going, attack, run all over them, because they're going to give you that opportunity to do so with Gary Sanchez behind the plate. And then, of course, in terms of the base running, like we've said with Tobias Myers, he has really struggled. Hitters have really struggled against him when he has runners on. He's a lot better from the stretch. So there's probably going to be some runs that you're going to have to get from a premium, that being extra base hits. And this is another thing that we can add here. Stephen Max saying, make Sanchez's knees itch too. Exactly. So itchy knees. That's the key to this one.
No, scratchy knees, not itchy.
Scratchy knees. I don't know. Scratching turns into itching. I don't know. It's all about the process. The chicken before the egg, I guess. Now, obviously, the last piece to this one is going to go a little bit more to the news narrative a little bit, but it's a have to. It really is a have to, especially with how they've performed in this series. I'm going to call this one Save Your Goodbyes. As we all know, regarding a Mets loss, this possibly could be Pete Alonso's last game in a Mets uniform. Now, depending on how you feel about him going forward, the Mets desperately need a big hit from their pending free agent first baseman. Will it happen? Who knows? But the Mets have 2 extra base hits in this series, not a single home run, and it is the perfect and only time to break that drought for Pete Alonso, who has not homered since September 19th. And if you want to advance to Philadelphia, the power needs to strike now. Put all the free agency stuff aside and finally shut us all up. Show us that you can perform on the big stage. And I'm looking at number 20 on this one. It's put up or shut up, because you're going to get no more chances after this if we're going home. So it all really has to do with how, we can get the big hit from our cleanup hitter, who was moved up to the cleanup spot after that incredible performance he had last night. Show us you deserve to be in that cleanup spot at this current moment. The eyes are on you. I understand, like we're talking about, not boating enough against pressure, and the pressure getting to him and the contract you're getting to him. Again, like we have said, you've been in the league for now 6 full seasons. Grow up. Let's see you actually act like an actual professional. Pete Alonso, of course, we talked a lot about him in the postgame yesterday. He's going to be a big topic of discussion in the offseason no matter what. Is there anything else that just bodes differently now? I don't even know what else to add. It's either come through or you don't come through, or we'll find somebody else to do it. I feel like that's just kind of how I look at it.
One of the things I'm worried about is that I feel like he obviously knows how big a game this is for him. He knows the pressure, the criticism that's out there. And I feel like when that happens to Pete, what happens is he becomes more aggressive at the plate. And I feel like the Brewers could take that to their advantage and just throw it in the dirt, throw it in the other batter's box. He's going to be fishing, trying to play hero ball. So I would like to see him. It's supposed to be baseball 101, but let's try not to chase the pitches in the dirt. Let's try to wait for our pitch and crush it. Like, that's just how hitting is supposed to be. But far too often, he's staring at strikes and swinging at balls. So just that overall approach. Don't listen to Chavez today. Do what you're supposed to do. Be the Pete Alonso you've been in the past that gets things done. I'm just afraid that with how much there's most pressure could be, that he's going to be even more aggressive, chasing more. That's what I'm afraid of.
Yeah, it could possibly happen. I think you're going to get a lot of high fastballs, especially with how it's kind of shaped out from the angle that Tobias Myers throws. But again, we need him to come through. It needs to happen, or nothing is going to happen, to be honest. I don't think with this type of pitcher, with what he struggles with what his strengths are in Tobias Myers, I don't think they're going to win this game without power. And they have to get extra base hits because I feel like these types of spots are going to be very premium, especially with how well he does from the stretch. So take away the double play, extra base hits, very key. And we do need to see some power from this lineup. And whether it comes from Lindor, whether it comes from Vientos, I'm hoping that it comes from Brandon Nimmo as well, to see him turn on some cutters, to maybe also see him turn on the fastball, which has also been a bugaboo for Myers to left-handed hitters. So we'll see what happens regarding how the lineup bodes well against Myers, but again, it's just at this point, it's do or die. This is game 3. You win, you're moving on to Philly. You lose, you're going home. And even though we know that this year didn't have high expectations that it had 2 years ago, for them to lose like this probably still would hurt, no matter what. If, we were to get swept 2-0, we would probably understand it because we're like, okay, well, there wasn't really much expectation. For the Mets to come so far like they have since that turnaround in June and go so far and make us believe once again, after a really rough start, being 11 games under 500, starting 0-5, right now it would have been nice it would be nice to see them once again battle the adversity, get punched in the teeth, and then bounce back from it tonight. Hopefully it happens. Again, the Mets lost game 1 against the Padres 2 years ago, and they had to fight all the way back. The Mets took game 1. Every single team that has won game 1 in the Wild Card series has won the series. But also, this is the second time that the Wild Card series has gone to game 3, and the Mets have been involved in both of them. So, of course, the Mets have to do these things in dramatic fashion. Hopefully, it does well. Hopefully, they get more than one hit today in a game 3. That would be great. That would be improvement as compared to. But it all really depends on if they do end up losing. It all depends on how they do lose, of course. I feel like that's the best way you can put it. And it is going to be quite a show. Let's just say that for our post game coming up about 20 minutes after tonight's game and game 3. For those of you in here on our YouTube channel, make sure to hit the subscribe button. Turn on post notifications to not miss episode 90 of the Mets podcast coming up, the post-game show. Now, going in, we'll obviously exit with the poll that I set up in the chat. For those of you in here, I asked who is going to advance to the National League Division Series tonight to play Philly. 62% of you are saying the Mets, so we do have a decent amount of confidence. 22% of you are saying the Brewers, and 16% of you are pleading the fifth. You don't want to jinx anything. And listen, I think that, at the end of the day, yes, it has been a season that has not really had many expectations to it. But again, it all really has to do with how it does end. But Frank, any last comments you'd like to make going into this do or die moment? It's either your win, or you get in. And you get in, or you lose, you're done.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like mentioning 2022 is a big thing for me. Can we get past this round? Can we actually get to a DS series again? I mean, that'd be really nice because, as we know, unfortunately, so far in the Mets history, the playoff outings, they're not consistent. They're kind of hit or miss. Sometimes you have a drought. Sometimes it's every other year, whatever. Yeah. But when you get there, you want to actually do something. So I'd like to actually see the Mets advance, get to the next round. That'd be great. I don't want to go on the wild card series both times. So this has been a crazy year, as we said, roller coaster of emotions. A lot has happened, but you don't want it to end in this fashion. You like to see it keep going. It took so much work to get here that you don't want to just go out in 3 days.
Obviously, of course, talking about the expectation, but we've seen this team do it before, and riding the highs and riding the lows. We've talked about it from the offense, or even sometimes the pitching as well. Volume 0 and volume 100. Those are the different ways that the Mets go off of. And that's kind of mostly how it's been for the offense. Hopefully, we get a volume 100. I would love to have another 5-run inning like they did in game 1. That would be really, really cool. But again, it's all really has to do with how the pieces fall into place. We have seen the Mets go back and forth of, they're not hitting, then they're hitting, then they're not hitting. They didn't really hit much last night. Maybe today is the day that they hit. I don't know, but hopefully it all falls into place. It is a brand new series right now. It is win or go home. You are tied 1-1. And hopefully, when we come back and do our post-game, we have good news to share and good news to talk about. For our post-game show, win or lose, we are going to allow you guys to call in towards the end of the towards the end of the show. So make sure to stay in tune for that. If you guys want to give any comments of how we do things, or if you have any questions going into the off season or going into hopefully the next round, I hope. But we don't know what's going to happen, and we're all here for the ride with you guys. So we're going to cut it off here at an hour, of course, let you guys breathe, and everybody watching right now to mentally prepare themselves for this do or die game 3 in Milwaukee. The series is tied 1-1. The Mets have all eyes on them. They are the only series that is still active in the wild card round. But again, the Mets are going to have to find a way or they are going home. Other than that, thank you guys so much for tuning in to our pregame show. Like we said, post-game show about 20 minutes after Game 3, win or lose. That will be episode 90 of our podcast. We'll also have our third Mike, Andrew, in here. He's only really allowed to be scheduled around post-games. So for those of you who are big Andrew stans out there, he will be here for the post-game show. Most likely, who knows? Sometimes he falls asleep. Sometimes he eats a little too much. You know, things happen. All right. You know, you never know. But as for the pregame show, we're going to wrap it up here. Like we said, post-game show, of course, coming up after the game. And obviously follow everybody individually, including Andrew as well. The links are in the description. Make sure to hit the subscribe button. Our listening platforms, of course, 9 a.m. Our podcasts go out. We just put out the Game 2 post-game at 9 a.m. And Twitter and TikTok and all the other stuff, of course. All the links are in the description, so I don't really need to remind you here. And also make sure to leave a like on the stream if you have not already. It really helps us out. And yeah, that's pretty much it. And now I will play a outro that is a lot less louder now. It's a little bit quieter. I finally went around to making it a little bit quieter so your ears don't burst if you're wearing headphones. So you're welcome. I finally remembered to do so. But other than that, last message, of course, let's go Mets. Finish the job today. Do or die in Milwaukee. We'll see you guys tonight.